Welcome in, adventurer. Pull up a chair to the hearth and crack open a cold one with me. Today we're going to be talking about a fabled chapter in our dear game's history, the Mark of the World Souls saga, the Warcraft expansion, The War Within. As you may know, our game has been around for a long time, and in that span of time, over 10 expansions have been released for it. They have had their highs and lows, with everybody having a favorite among one of them. With that being said, I want to explore these over the next year with a fresh set of eyes and personally rate how they play now. Today, however, we're going to be looking at the latest expansion, The War Within. This was the Penta-Ultimate landmark chapter to start Blizzard's World Souls saga, where the world itself was trying to talk to Anduin and Thrall but was using TeamSpeak instead of Discord, so the message didn't get through correctly. The War Within did get some small amount of hype when it was announced, especially with the return of Chris Metzen. There were a lot of questions as to why this expansion was being set up this way, and while there are many theories, we can only guess at this point. So that brings me to a question. Did this expansion do the job? It had to stand on its own while being part of something big. A first ever in WoW's history, a 3-part story trilogy. The result was honestly messy. The cast of characters spearheading this expansion had ties to WoW's storied past after all, and some of the baggage they carried happened in previous expansions. Before we dive in, I want you to know that this is my personal review as a casual player of this game. I will be judging 3 areas of the game that I feel is crucial to selling a new MMO's expansion, especially with the one we're reviewing today as it needed to do something new. The first of these 3 areas are story and leveling. I feel these two are lumped into one as they go hand in hand. The second is features. Every new expansion introduces new mechanics that then get forgotten about when a new expansion launches, like a TikTok trend. The last part of the expansion I want to review is class feel and dungeons. Every time a new expansion launches, we get class overhauls or stripped down versions of our class. We also can't forget about dungeons. They haven't changed much over the expansions, so we'll see if that's changed much here. Each of these 3 sections will get a rating out of 3, with the total review of the expansion being out of 9. You may be asking why I did not include endgame into this. I understand some people rush through the expansion trying to hit that endgame as they feel that that's where the game starts, and while that may be true, I personally feel like the 3 parts I mentioned above, at least for a casual player like myself, really needs to sell you on the expansion before you get to the endgame. If those 3 parts fall short, I think most people won't even make it there. Please note that the story section review will have some spoilers. But with that out of the way, let's jump into the review. The first one we are tackling is the most important for me, story and leveling. It is something all players will interact with one way or the other, even if you're hitting that skip button faster than a kobold screaming for his candle. The War Within starts off like a lot of the previous expansions, with a bang, setting up the trilogy's main villain, Xal'atath. You're immediately yeeted into the shores of Dornegal, where you fight off the Nerubian horde. From there it slows down quickly. You meet a new dwarf faction, help them fight off some Nerubians, meet more dwarf people who are having a lover spat with the first dwarf people you met. All the while, Magni and his family play coach. The zone for here is nice and beautiful. It has open zones, hilly terrains, and dynamic leveling events going on. This is all nice, but I found myself bored in this area pretty fast and could not wait to move on. I was not personally invested in these new dwarves, or Magni for the matter, so by the time I got to move on to the next area, I was ready to put them in the rearview mirror. Imagine my surprise to find out that the next zone was filled with, you guessed it, more dwarves. These dwarves were slowly being turned into machines and had to be stopped because this machine version had some bad firmware or something. So you work with Magni and one of the dwarf people from above and try to stay awake long enough to stop the high speaker. Then when you finally find him, he has the most generic exit imaginable and teleports out at the last minute. Then Magni discovers the magic of Disney and cures his thick skin. After I was done vomiting in the corner and splashing water on my face to stay awake, Anduin tells me he discovered something. At this point I was like, please God, no more dwarves. As far as the leveling experience went, we got some nice mix-up with kobolds down here, but was over pretty quickly. Many of the underground areas looked neat with some cool monsters, but I just wanted to move on to something that mattered in the expansion. This led to the next zone, and the only one that I feel like mattered to the theme of the expansion overall. Hollowfall really turned things around for me, at least at the beginning. You're introduced to this enormous underground area lit by an enormous light crystal called Beladar, who is maybe sending text messages to Anduin's brain, but it's hard to tell through all the trauma inflicted on him by Nipple Boy. Faerun Lothar acts as a guide to this area, and we learn that strong monsters come out when the light crystal turns dark, which only started happening after Sigaris dropped his sword to a warrior disarm ability. And then everybody forgot about it. This was pretty cool as it set up tension and mystery in the area. You get to meet the remnants of the Arathi Empire's expedition team and see the various villages that they have set up. This was the first time it made me really want to explore the area. Between the light crystal, the creepy dark sanguine, a mysterious fish who wants you to toss him into some dark water, and the persistent threat of the Nerubians, I felt there was plenty to sink your teeth into here. It is also the first time the moniker of the expansion felt true. There was a war happening within this underground area. It is also the first real fight against Xal'atath's army you get to experience, and it felt like they were setting up a tense overarching story of darkness creeping into the area. That's unfortunately when things started to fall apart. You quickly get a giant battle that turns the crystal dark and you think, oh, what if it stays dark for a while? But it's instantly fixed by a pep talk from Faerun, because I guess the crystal played sports back in the day and really enjoyed a good motivational speech from the captain. I was also disappointed by all the trauma and struggles Anduin was going through as a paladin, because several times in the story they go, hey, we need more light, and Anduin goes, I can't, I've got performance issues. All the while they ignore a champion of light right next to him. Even just a small nod or explanation of why you can't help would have went a long way. Even as a priest you have light. For me personally, this removes some of the immersion from the story. WoW has always had the problem of you feeling just like a side character. You don't need to be a chosen one, but some acknowledgement would help things immensely. You don't get much time to cringe at the pace of the story because it whiplashes you by telling you a random village is under attack by Nerubians and needs your help. So off you go, helping evacuate the town. Then more spiders show up, and like a good brainwashed monkey, Anduin goes YOLO like his father did because the pep talk he got from Faerun, diving into a horde of Nerubians, for reasons. You are then saved by the new playable factions NPC and get told by an angry void elf girl Illyria that she believes Anduin survived. So off you go to find the remnants of his shit on the battlefield, only to get sidetracked into helping other survivors of the airship crash. This is the new zone Oz-Khajet, but you wouldn't know if you weren't looking hard enough. It is here you learn there is a giant spider city, and not all spiders are bad. Some just want hugs and kisses. The leader of this no-eat-humans faction sends you on a series of quests and promises it would be helpful in returning your captured friends, implying Anduin is one of them. But one secret love letter later, and nope, Anduin is just fine, chilling with his new buddy who he has to protect from angry elf girl Illyria. It is here you get told that once again, not all spiders are bad and they have 9 to 5s to get to as well. They just voted for the wrong president, and now that president is working for somebody evil. You get a story quest to spread the other faction's spider propaganda before Illyria decides Xal'atath doesn't have enough holes in her. This sends you on an escape quest and leads to one of the most pointless cinematics I've ever seen. You jump off a cliff with Illyria staying behind for reasons, only for her to have an anime flashback of all her friends and goes YOLO, jumping off the cliff, making the entire cutscene pointless. I went to go turn my quest back in, and just as I started to get tired of the story, it just ends abruptly. You immediately get introduced to a new feature to help the various spider faction NPCs, and that's it. I was around level 78 and just stood there blinking dumbly. I was like, that's it? This is when most of the zone opens up and lets you explore and gradually slides you into the endgame. The end of the War Within story here was jarring and confusing. Most of the Warcraft expansions before would take you to max level long before you reach the end of the campaign. So that brings me to my thoughts about the leveling experience and story. I honestly couldn't help feeling that the first 2 zones were a giant waste of time to the story that they were trying to set up. The pacing was super inconsistent, and I felt the entire Hollowfall area was rushed and trivialized very quickly. With Midnight's expansion just around the corner, a new focus on Xal'atath herself along with the old zones, I find myself asking, what was the point of the War Within? Maybe with the updated streamlined story focus coming down the line, this will make more sense. But for now, the only thing of significant value that happened this expansion was Delaran getting disenchanted. So for this section, I give it a 1 out of 3. Weak sauce. The next area of the review I want to focus on is its features. As I said before, we are always given new power features and abilities that lose relevance fast whenever a new expansion drops. At first I thought this trend would end until I hit the end of the campaign. This is when you get an ability tree based on which covenant you pick. I thought we learned our lesson with this on Shadowlands, but maybe not. We also get what I considered one of the best things out of the expansion, and that's Delves. This is like a self-contained dungeon with a story that can be ran with you or your friends, all in bumbling Bran, helping you along the way. Most of these felt varied enough and added just enough to be good. Hero talents were added and were supposed to be an additional way to roleplay your perfect class based off the iconic Warcraft characters, but honestly it just ended up feeling like more talent points that you just spent. Warbands were also added to this expansion, an account-wide progression system allowing characters to share achievements, collections, and other progress, including a shared bank and renown. This was a big W, and was amazing for alt-holics and casual players like myself. This brings my score for new features for the War Within to 2.1 out of 3. Solid. Last but not least is the last section of the expansion I want to focus on, class feel and dungeons. Every expansion now seems to bring a stat squish and class revamps. Two main classes I love to play are Paladin and Priest. I played both of these after the expansion came out, and both of these ended up feeling weird to me. A lot of the talent trees replace default abilities, so for someone like me who often takes breaks from WoW, you might come back and go, what happened to Word of Glory? Does my spec still have this? Only for you to realize it's named something different because a talent point you spent transformed it. Playing a Disc Priest was weird as well. I hate a lot of these new abilities we got, especially all these temporary ones with 3-minute cooldowns. It left me casting the same 4 abilities over and over until the mob died. I feel like this needs a lot of work. I miss the old days when Paladins still had seals and cast judgment spells based on them. Even the auras have been dialed back. Give me my Blessing of Kings back. I feel like there is a class identity crisis right now where none of them feel distinct from the other. I remember a time when it felt different just to play a different spec of the same class. And as for the dungeons, I don't have much to say about it, to be honest. It felt like dungeons in every other expansion. The tank pulls the entire dungeon in 4 minutes and the boss is dead before they even get to say hello. I have no idea how to make those more engaging, so I'll leave those to your guys' thoughts. That brings this section to 0.8 out of 3. I really disliked the class feel and felt like dungeons were a NASCAR race on steroids. Overall, that brings our grand total to 3.9 out of 9. Meh. I honestly did not care too much for the War Within and felt like most of it was pointless in the grand scheme of things. I also felt like it failed to be a good launching step for the trilogy and that they were trying to stretch some semblance of a story here. I feel like if the entire thing took place in Hollowfell and the pacing was corrected to make the crystal tempo swings more dangerous, it would have really sold it for me. Does that mean this expansion is bad? Well, that's up for you to decide. This is my own personal experience with it and how I felt about it. I will never shy people away from trying something. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Was this an expansion that sold you, or did you end up feeling the same way I did? I plan on doing all the expansions as time goes on with the same 3 sections covered and the same grading scale. But that is all for now. Thanks so much for watching. Hit subscribe to stay updated on future videos, and until the next one, Dreas out.